Hi, it's 3 o'clock. Welcome to Together Unlocked, brought to you as always by Together 2012. We're an arts organisation led by disabled artists. We're based in the main London 2012 host borough of Newham. And with me in my studio today is our chair, the artist and documenter Julie Newman. I'm Ju Gosling, also known as Ju90. I'm the artistic director. And before we have a little bit of audio description, we're going to go to the other end of our long wheeled virtual sofa to the West Midlands for some introductions and audio description.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the West Midlands and welcome to Wednesday. So, I am Robin Surgener, Business Director at Together 2012 and an artist known as Angry Fish up here in the West Midlands, um, which keeps trying to pretend it's nearly spring. So, I've worn so I'll come to what I'm wearing in a second, but because I thought it was nearly spring when the sun came out earlier. So, I am sat in front of our lovely velvet curtains, scarlety deep red velvet curtains in our studio. I am sporting slightly dishevelled grey silver hair today, no rimmed black armed glasses, shavenish maybe, and I am wearing a white round neck t-shirt with an Ian Jury t-shirt. Now it's got 16 pictures on it, of which I'm not going to spend my time describing. I'm very sorry about that. But it is a t-shirt for Ian Jury, and it says "Reasons to be Cheerful," yeah, which was an Ian Jury song. And I decided because the spring was coming, I would wear it.
Well, we certainly could do with some reasons to be cheerful. I think I might have misled you slightly on Monday when we talked about it being the festival of Imbolc, the old pagan festival of spring. I think that means slightly
I
different
do.
things.
I feel deluded.
Well, never mind. So today,
Yeah, and I'm Tracy Surgener, and I'm usually in the background watching the show to make sure everything's working all right. And I am not in my spring outfit, I am in my cozy, warm winter jumper. I'm wearing a winter jumper with two reindeers touching noses on, which is quite nice.
And
I am a wheelchair user, and I have long blonde hair, which is in a ponytail to keep it out of the way. I've got pale skin, and I'm not wearing any glasses.
I've just had a message from the back room to say that there's currently no subtitles.
okie dokie. Well, we will check that out as we speak. I do believe the system is up online, but I'm gonna check that out this second as well. What I think is really interesting about your outfit, Tracy. Ah, yes, I can see the subtitles are coming now. So that's all good news. Thank you again, Global Real Time Captioning. And thank you, EJ, in the back room, for letting us know. So, yeah, the other thing we talked about on Sunday was yesterday being the Christian festival of Candlemas and the old 12th night when they took the decorations down and lots of people leaving them up. So, your Christmas decoration, you're like the two
Yay!
sides of our introduction on Monday, aren't you? Robin's doing spring and
I'm doing.
Tracy's doing the ceremony the next day. And indeed, as we said, we kept our Christmas decorations up, and I certainly didn't get around to taking them down yesterday. So I feel like the new 12th night is probably this weekend. Anyway, I've got short, self-styled hennaed hair in what we describe as a corona crop, just thanking mercifully we're not broadcasting in 4K. I've got pale olive skin, green eyes behind black plastic glasses, silver coloured jewellery, black wrist braces, and today, in honour of LGBT plus History Month, I've got, well, it's a purple long sleeve top, but it actually looks quite blue on the screen, so that was a bit pointless. And a purple, blue, and cream sort of strangely patterned hoodie. I had it on a couple of weeks ago, and the only thing I could remember about it is that Suzanne Bull from Attitude is Everything had the identical one, so it must be as old as most of everything else in my wardrobe. Behind us is a teddy bear who I will introduce properly later, but he's waiting to compete in the Clockwork Paralympics that are coming up after 3:30. But first, Julie, you've been very patient. What do you look like?
Patient is what patient looks like. I'm Julie Newman. I'm the chair of Together 2012. I've got what have I got? Gold and silver hair. Grows. I've got dark rimmed glasses. Today I'm wearing a pale blue sweatshirt, but underneath I had put on a purple t-shirt. But again, the color gets a little bit washed out in the lights. So I've got my. Also, it's a bit nippy today. So I've got this on. Yesterday was Groundhog Day.
Was it? And that's an
Yes.
American tradition, isn't it?
It is. It was also sort of made famous in a film, I think, in the 90s. But
Yes, and like every good film, it's been on at least twice in the last 10 months. So I watched it for about the first time in 20 years, not recently, which is why I'm kind of throwing it back to you as you grew up in the States to tell us more about it.
well, in truth, where I grew up, it wasn't really that much of a feature. But the folklore goes that if the groundhog can see his shadow when he pops his head out of his little nest in this particular place in Pennsylvania, then that foretells the weather for the next 6 weeks. Well, yesterday he could see his shadow, which means that for the next 6 weeks it's going to be very cold and wet and wintry, but then it's going to be glorious and hot.
Right. So I think the Americans' way of telling whether or not it's spring is possibly just as hit and miss as Robin's appears to be, considering you've got snow out of the window. So it's Wednesday, and as always on a Wednesday, we start with a report back from our pop up poetry club. We're an arts organisation. We cover a very wide range of arts, from street art and carnival art to music, live art, drawing, painting, photography, filmmaking, dance, drama, and much, much more. Like everybody else, we've restarted what we call our clubs, our year round outreach program on Zoom, but our poetry club is taking place by phone because that's much more accessible to most people, although it has to be said, not to me. So, what usually happens is Noel, our support worker, calls everybody up, puts them on a group conference call, which we pay for. So you literally you get called, we pay for the calls, and then the poetry club takes place. However, we need to say get well soon, Noel, particularly as you're the only person trained on the system. So today people did a little bit of poetry working just from home, and Alison Marchant, our club's program leader, very kindly typed things up. Was there anything you wanted to add to that report, Julie?
The subjects that she chose for today was the one in advance, which was a frosty morning. But because people were working independently, she added another topic, which was shoes. Um, I think it indicated how successful the group is, that people were able to write their poems independently without the group input into it, although everybody was missed.
Yeah, and I think the other thing was that some people said actually they couldn't write without
Mm.
the stimulus and yeah, just the support of the group. So you don't have to live in Newham to join our clubs at the moment. And in fact, you never did have to, you just had to be able to get to us. So if you've got enough data and you're interested, the clubs are open to any disabled person and whoever's with them at home. On the second Monday of the month, we have photographers and filmmakers. On the fourth Monday, we have dance on screen. On a Tuesday morning, we have make and natter. And on a Friday, we have a still life session. All of those clubs have been cut down to 1 hour because we think that's really all that's possible on Zoom, and pretty much you can join in with the things that you already have at home. But if you do need things, we will post them to you. So drop us a line. I'm going to put it up on screen, but it is info@together2012.org.uk. And we just have a few of those poems on the subject of the frosty morning to read now. So, Robin, I think you've got one from Glory Sango.
I have. I will just get it. So I'm looking at you guys. So this is a frosty day from Glory Sengo. When I was walking in the snow, I sat down to have a picnic. Then we were playing snowball fights. Louise and I were playing snowball fights. And then we were drumming and chasing each other.
Well, that sounds like fun, Glory. This is from Crystal Peasy, also called Frosty Morning. I like to talk about frost mornings when the weather is very cold. The coldness is very bitter and icy, and the cold can go right through you to your bones. You feel very shivery, and when you feel very cold, it's very hard to get warm again. And it takes a long time to get warm again when you're cold for a very long time. And you need a warm place. You need to be by a radiator. And you also need a warm drink. I'm not quite sure why you like to talk about frosty mornings, Crystal, but as a fellow wheelchair user, well, all of us as fellow wheelchair users know that syndrome. When you get cold, you simply can't warm up again. So, Julie, you've got one to finish with us, haven't you?
I've got a poem from Dawn Barber called The Frost. Frost doesn't care whether you like it or not. It's here making you feel cold. Frost on your car, on the grass, on your windows. It's all around, but we won't draw a picture about it. We just wait for it to clear in the warmth.
Yeah, another one very much enjoying the warmth. So, as we said on Monday, today is World Read Out Loud Day. So, we've done a little bit of reading out loud already, and we thought we'd have a bit of a chat about it and then read some more stuff, including, well, I've got a poem on a frosty morning, and I think Julie's got some of her poems. But we're going to kick off with a dreadful thing to say, a couple's conversation about reading out loud. So I'm going to send, over to you, West Midlands, for the introduction.
Okay, well, I'll explain why, and then Trace can talk about the experience. So, we both like books, and a good tale, and unfortunately, one of the things that Tracy finds difficult is holding a book. So and as most people who read do tend to like to read when they go to bed, um, I offered, I was going to say chosen, that's wrong. I was offered to read to Tracy, and sometimes that book is one I like, and sometimes it isn't, but that's life. But that's what we do. We go to bed, and I read to Tracy until something happens. I mean, or not happens, in fact. Be clear on that.
Until you go to sleep.
Yes.
Until he falls asleep, actually. So, yeah, I mean, something that it's irritating to me that I'm not able to read when I go to bed now. I mean, I do read in the day, but I've got other little things that I use. I've either got to hold the book flat on the kitchen table and lean over it, which means I can't read for too long before I get a neck ache. And then I've got like a cookery book stand, which will hold the cookery book and keep the pages open. Because that's the other thing, having to reach out and keep the pages open. So I can, I've found a few ways around it during the daytime, but I do quite enjoy listening to a book when I go to bed.
There's nothing like really reading out loud, is there?
Mm.
I mean, I did sort of, the nerdy bit of me was thinking, oh, this is a brilliant chance for us to go and test all of these elaborate gadgets they try and flog disabled people at trade fairs, where they kind of turn pages and do all sorts of things. Most of mine I've retired. I mean, I've got a house full of books, but I tend to read just about everything on the Kindle now. And even then, I find that by night time, my fingers are very, very numb. But I
Yeah.
haven't got any audiobooks. And I think, again, an audiobook is lovely to listen to somebody else reading, but I think the reading out loud day is also about how much you get
Mm.
out of reading out loud in terms of. So, how, I mean, I know you say you don't always like the book, but does Tracy choose the books?
Um, I mean, to give it some history, I grew up in a household where we read to each other.
Mm.
Um, so then for both Josh and Emily, I read at bedtime, way past when they were able to read themselves because
We.
it was, well, sorry. Um,
It's always like that, isn't it?
um, and then I suppose the reading to Tracy started um, by a book that Tracy'd be reading in the day, and then wanted to continue the flow of it. So I would then only get bits of the story,
Mm.
which became a bit more annoying. I think the first one was Flowers in the Attic, and that's got to be
Long time ago.
yeah, yeah. I don't even know we were married then. But we were obviously
Although for anybody who's interested in these things and is one of the many people with lots of time on their hands, there was a big feature a few days ago about all of those blockbusters, and particularly, I think, is it Virginia Andrews?
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
Because that's back in the late 70s, isn't it?
Mm.
yeah. So
Those
we sorry, and then just that but so now we kind of choose a book. Um, the book we're reading at the moment is about a time traveling person, and marriage, which is um, not quite my cup of tea. But then we read a Michael Crichton. I mean, the thing is, it takes us about 18 months to read a book because I am very good at falling asleep,
Yeah.
just not staying asleep. But and I think if I get my way, our next book is going to be a Martin Cruz Smith book from. Might go right back to the beginning and start with Gorky Park, I think was the first one, or Red Square, which are brilliantly written novels about mm, police and uh, um, secret police goings on in Moscow. But they're really, really good.
Mm.
But do you like, I mean, because one of the things I'm interested in is if somebody else is choosing the book, whether you kind of suddenly find that you like something, or you've come across something, or you're reading something that you otherwise wouldn't have done.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing. I've take quite a lot of guidance from Joshua because Joshua reads, incessantly and always has as a child. He would be, and even now, Emily can be reading three different books because there's a book that Dad reads when he takes it to bed, and then the nights that I'm allowed, I can read. And I must state that we did used to take turns in reading to Emily, but I'm not as good at the character sayings as Dad is. So now Dad has to do the reading most nights. And Josh has introduced me to quite a lot of books that are out of my sort of zone of things I'd have normally read. Um, but yeah, it does. It is a bit like that. It is nice to be exposed to different things that I wouldn't have thought about. And if Rodin starts reading something, or we're reading a book, because he used to just read what I wanted because I was I was in the middle of this book, and desperate to know what was going on. And then I'd say, I'll catch you up. I'll just tell you what's happened, and I'd quickly tell him, and then he'd try and carry on. And I thought, no, that's a bit selfish. We'll choose one together. But
Yeah, I have some books that I schedule. So there's the sort of morning book and the afternoon book and the last thing before you go to bed book. And then if one of them takes over, then it becomes the book
mm,
that you keep doing. I'm not massively keen on short stories, but one of the things that I was thinking is, have you thought about reading short stories because it takes so long to get through a whole book? Or would you recommend to other people that, you can still very much follow the book, spreading it out like that?
I think I still enjoy a whole novel rather than short stories. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a joke that I do some voluntary work, and they've got a book club where I do this voluntary work once a month. And I'd be covering the till, and it's a community shop that I do some work in, and I'd be listening to the people talking about their books, and I'd chip in every now and again, and they'd say, "Oh, are you reading anything, Tracy?" I say, "Oh, yeah, yeah, we're reading," and explain that at night Rob reads, and each month I get, "You finished that book yet?" No. Rodin's really slow, you know. Some nights you'll get a few pages, that some nights we get a few lines, and he starts slurring, and I watch,
That
I
would
hear,
might be getting close to too much information.
I hear the book sort of
Concerned at that point.
slipping, you know, bashing it. And I said, "Well, I think you're asleep. Love, take your glasses off. You know, that'll do."
But I think it's worth highlighting for people who, yeah, just hearts sink at the thought of having to wade their way through reading a whole book.
Mm.
For World Book Day, which is a different venture later in the year, they produce things called quick reads, and they're often a sort of like a long short story by a famous author. And you can find an awful lot of them in the charity shops too, because they're free, given away free to start with. So if you're looking for like a good book, something a bit more solid than a short story, but not too long, then I think those quick reads are really worth reading. Julie likes to read on her own at night time, don't you, Julie?
Very
She's got
much.
her Kindle, and we used to enjoy me making up stories. But at the moment, I think ever since she discovered Kindle Unlimited, no, she'd rather have kind of naff cheap stories from Kindle than a naff story from me. So she tends to get very protective of the iPad if I come close to it. But if I manage to get a hold of it, I'll read a few lines, really just to tease. But what I found fun recently, and I was talking to your teenager about earlier, and apparently they do the same thing occasionally, is adding words in. So at the moment, I read Julie's books to her, but I put Westies. Our assistant's dogs are part Westie, but I had a Westie before. Thanks to other people, I've got a lot of what I call Westiebelia in the house, nauseating kind of little souvenirs with Westie faces. So the Westies have started cropping up in the crimes. And, when people start pulling out clues and things, the poo bags come out. You haven't really taken terribly well to that, but you've been quite consumers, haven't you?
I try to be.
Because you see, it's really important for the person reading out loud to have that opportunity.
I suppose so. I've never. I can read out loud, and I do read out loud, and I can do presentations, and I can do public speaking, and all of those sort of things without any difficulty. I don't like reading out loud personally at all. I never have done. I think because I can read quicker than I can speak. So, sort of like in my mind, it's like tripping over myself, and I don't really enjoy it.
It's funny because I speed read. I mean, I always
You
have
do,
done.
yes,
So I
yes.
read. I've got the ability to read a block of text at a time, which can be quite confusing in itself. But I still I like hearing reading out loud. I think it's actually, and at the moment I'm particularly taking this on board. I think it can be really, really hard to just read from a script. As we said on Monday, and we're going to be doing lots of things throughout February, this is LGBT plus History Month. I'm also a co-chair of Regard, the National LGBTQI plus disabled people's organisation. And we've all been asked to, have talks available for different groups. So I'm doing a lot of talks this month, and also to pre-record the talk just in case. Oh my goodness, it took me hours and hours and hours and hours. I wrote the script 10 days ago, and if I was delivering that to a live audience, it would go down great. Trying to read it out loud to a camera, eventually I just had to settle for the fact if I could get through a whole paragraph at a time, that was going to have to suffice. And the version that's patched together on the Regard website has got an awful lot of dissolves in, where I just had to keep taking takes and stitching them together. So yeah, I think I probably find it easier to be sort of messing around and adding Westies to other people's stories than even trying to read my own stuff out loud. I hadn't realised what a difference it makes when you don't have an audience. But Robin, your teenager was recommending that it isn't just about fiction, and I think that's absolutely right. I mean, sometimes it's just nice to read newspaper stories out loud to each other, but we have just had, from the world of homeschooling, what's this wonderful book called, Robin?
Okay, this book is called Storm in a Teacup: The Physics of Everyday Life by Helen Sersky.
And we all thought it would be quite fun for us to hear Robin doing a little bit of reading. Don't worry, he's not going to go on for hours, but
Don't go to sleep, Robin.
don't go to
Yeah, that won't work. Okay, so I'm going to start at chapter 1 and just, read a bit and see how it comes over. So chapter 1, Popcorn and Rockets. The gas laws. Explosions in the kitchen are generally considered a bad idea, but just occasionally, a small one can produce something delicious. A dried corn kernel contains lots of nice food like components: carbohydrates, proteins, iron, and potassium. But they're very densely packed, and there's a tough armored shell in the way. The potential is tantalizing, but to make it edible, you need some extreme reorganization. An explosion is just the ticket, and very conveniently, this seed carries the seeds of its own destruction within it. Last night, I did a bit of a ballistic cooking and made popcorn. It's always a relief to discover that a tough, unwelcoming exterior can conceal a softer inside. But why does this one make fluff instead of blowing itself to bits? Once the oil in the pan was hot, I added a spoonful of kernels, put the lid on, and left it while I put the kettle on to make tea. Outside, a huge storm was raging and chunky raindrops were hammering against the window. The corn sat in the oil and hissed gently. It looked to me as though nothing was happening, but inside the pan, the show had already started. Each corn kernel contains a germ, which is the start of a new plant, and the endosperm, which is food for the new plant. The endosperm is made up of starch packaged into granules, and it contains 14% water. As the kernels sat in the hot oil, the water was starting to evaporate, turning into steam. Hotter molecules moved faster, so that as each kernel heated up, there were more and more water molecules whooshing around inside it as steam. The evolutionary purpose of corn kernel's shell is to withstand assault from outside, but it now had to contain an internal rebellion, and it was acting like a mini pressure cooker.
Do you know, I really enjoyed that. And it also made me actually genuinely understand a little bit more what was happening pretty much every Saturday night when we go, what shall we do? I know, we'll stay in and have our night, and I'll put the popcorn on because I get the I get the bags and I stick them in the microwave. And absolutely, it is an explosion, but I never thought about it. Um, we will be moving on in a little bit. And also, as always, on a Wednesday, we will be taking a nature walk with Merlot, the assistant's dog. But goodness knows why, I'm going to put myself through doing some reading out loud as well. This is a poem called Losing My Voice. And one of the reasons I chose it is I wrote it 2 years ago. We all have to get used to that, don't we? Sort of looking back over normal life. I wrote it 2 years ago when I went to an Arts Council meeting at the Barbican. And every single person who went to that meeting came back with this really bad cold and cough, a coronavirus, basically. And it went round everybody's offices, and some people got it twice. And because I'm somebody who, every time I get a cold symptom, I'm ill for at least 3 weeks. I lost my voice. So this is called Losing My Voice. I had my voice when I left home, but as soon as I began to roam, my voice just seemed to fade away, no matter where or what I say. My voice is not the same as yours. My voice must therefore be ignored. My voice is not a valid one when everything is said and done. It isn't heard by passers by. It isn't heard by those on high. It isn't heard by those who claim to speak to people in my name. It isn't heard with all the rest. It isn't heard when I protest. It isn't heard although I say you can't erase me in this way. Speak up, shout out is what we're told. Go forth, be strong and very bold. And yet the only ears that hear are those that venture very near. So listen closely for the sound. Millions of voices echo round, stolen from us all, not lost, silenced regardless of the cost. So that's what I call part of my outspoken word artistry. But now, as it's exactly 3:30, we're going to say thank you so much, Tracy. We're going to
Thank
see
you.
you on Friday for the art club.
Yeah.
And now we're going to go over to snowy Norfolk for a walk with Merlo, the assistance dog. So there won't be any captions on this, but Julie is going to do a bit of audio description.
It started quite quickly. Sorry, I need to catch up. There's a snowy path. There's dog head. There's dog head shaking. There's dog head moving. There's dog at trot. There's lots of snow. Dog looking at snow in field. Dog looking at people behind. Dog pausing and waiting. Dog going on regardless of people not being with him.
Oh, he's so happy, isn't he? Galloping down around the path. I mean, it must be fields either side of the path, but you can't tell because it's just snow, isn't it?
It is, because I remember those fields from before the snow came. But it's actually quite deep. And here's his people. And then off he goes again. His little ears are flapping. The sky is really whited out, so there's no colour in the sky. The weeds that come up and he's flapping his little ears again, having a little shake. The weeds that have come up are quite black and dark against the snow, and there's little bits of earth coming through. So
Because his little camera's getting covered with snow and earth, isn't it? So it must still be actually snowing, although you can't see it any other way.
he's running on again. There's a barbed wire fence or a wire fence to the right. Now he's galloping. He's really having a good old run.
Yeah, this is one dog that really loves the snow.
So he's having a good time. The snow is quite deep, actually. I'd say it's a good few inches deep. But he does keep checking back to see his people are there before he gallops on again. I think he really is enjoying himself, as you said, Ju. I think he's having a lovely time. He's quite tempted by the fields, but he's getting at speed, and his little ears are shaking again. His little head is shaking. He keeps pausing and looking around.
But not for long. Oh, and I think that one is over. And welcome, Josh Surgener. Do you want to give us some introduction and some audio description?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Delightful. Well, maybe not. Depends on who you ask, I suppose. So
We're always pleased to see you, Josh.
As you said, I'm Josh Surgener. I'm one of the other hosts of Together Unlocked. I have long blonde hair, not up in a kind of bun today, but more trying to get in my eyes, mouth, and nose. I'm wearing a dark blue long sleeve zipped shirt that has the Team GB lion and the Olympic rings on one side, and Adidas logo on another, and then it's actually, if I can hold my sleeve the right way around, it's the Union flag, and then in kind of negative space, it has the kind of lions that you'd see on the front of your passport on the cuff.
Oh, how interesting. Just wanted to let people know, I suspect, again, this is the latest technical problem with our hosts, Be Live. The captions will be back very, very shortly. And as always, there will be a recorded version of this show with enhanced audios and some of these little flashy changeovers taken out to reduce the risk of seizures. That goes up at 7 o'clock. The captions go up as well, so, and they will be full captions, so if you've missed anything, the recording will be there, as well, of course, as our highlights and links page, which is just underneath the main Together Unlocked TV page on our website. and we'll have details of everything we will discuss, including the sports and gaming report that Josh is going to give us soon.
And indeed, the captions are back online now.
Fantastic. So, first, it's time for the weekly Clockwork Paralympics, where we race clockwork toys for the right of one triumphant teddy bear to wear a medal for a week. That teddy bear takes part, well, both teddy bears take part in the international ongoing virtual bear hunt. And if you're doing a live stream or you've just got a teddy bear and a spare window, think about supporting the children who are on the bear hunt and stick a bear on your stream or in your window or both as well. Yes, that looks like a very well, perhaps you'd better audio describe the teddy bear.
Okay, so this is PC Ted. Or actually, no, he's a sergeant. I must apologise. He's been promoted since last time he was around. So this is Police Sergeant Ted. It is probably a golden teddy, wearing a blue, basically a really rich kind of dark navy blue uniform, as if he were a police person.
Wonderful. Well, we have in East London, we are represented by Liz, the English heritage bear. Liz is a traditional golden teddy bear with an English heritage sweater and a little, well, what would you describe it as? Checked bow tie. I think it's rather hilarious. I mean, this is a 20-year-old English heritage bear, but I think it's rather hilarious in retrospect that any teddy bear for English heritage had to have a bow tie on. I don't think it's quite the image they're trying to push at the moment.
I mean, just looking at the bottom of this one, I mean, it does seem to be the only place we buy teddies from, but this was a Harrods 250th year anniversary teddy, and I bet that it's the only police uniform with a hole in it for a tail.
I think you can probably be quite sure about that. Yeah, don't worry. We Londoners always see you tourists coming. Obviously, we don't buy teddy bears at Harrods, even if we could afford them. But yeah, keep the cash coming in, West Midlands tourists, by all means. Most of our teddy bears seem to be some kind of souvenir bear, but from cheaper places. I don't know what that tells us.
I don't think teddies in Harrods are expensive. It's about the only thing that isn't. But,
Yeah,
but actually, their teddies aren't.
So you go touristing in Harrods and then buy teddies so that you come out with something.
Yeah.
The Harrods bag.
Yes, a Harrods bag. And then pretend you've brought them for the children. Yeah, I think we'd better move swiftly on from that. So I'm going to put the Paralympics up. Josh is going to do the audio description. If you describe it first, Josh, and then I will start the race. And today's competitors, we see the return of the racing grannies. Not strictly speaking a Paralympic sport, but wheelchair dance is recognised by the Paralympic Committee. And we have had the racing grannies before, but we're going to stick to the same system, left or right hand side of the screen. So what's your choice, guys?
should go
Oh,
right hand side of the screen.
okay.
Left.
I was going to go blue for QPR.
All right, we'll go.
So it's the
QPR always lose, so we'll go with the right. We'll go with red on the right.
Okey doke. So I'm going to mute myself now, let you do a little bit of description, and then I'll put it on.
So on the screen, we have Ju on her well-known racing balcony. We've got green banisters on one side, a lovely bookcase, and then two racing grannies, one in blue on the left and one in red on the right. And we are going for the right-hand red granny, and they are off. And they appear to have finished level, but I do think that blue should be disqualified for attacking the other competitor.
Yeah, there's definite interference, and in fact, there's look, the red one is now still going.
I think we might have actually won for the first time in about 8 months.
Believe so.
Ju looks like she is angling towards the red competitor, but the video's frozen for us at this end. So hopefully we will
Sorry, I've
soon.
taken my mute off. Yes, we're having problems playing the videos, which again leads me to suspect, as all of my green bars are flashing away nicely, that there's a few internet problems further down the line. And I don't think it's going to let me show you. Ah, there we go. This is the Clockwork Paralympics first ever draw.
Oh no,
Steward's
there was a
inquiry.
disqualification. I'm sorry.
You can lose if you like,
No,
but
we-
there was indeed. They went in opposite directions, but they were completely level.
Oh, okay.
I'm booking my
You
ticket
know
to
you would have
Switzerland
chosen
now.
loser otherwise.
Yeah, Lucerne will be getting a visit at some point in the near future. So we have a wonderful golden smiley egg medal for Sergeant Ted.
Yes.
And when you say smiley egg medal, where does that come from?
It was Emily got it in her nursery year at school for being the child who'd become more smiley than he ever was previous. The happiest
Oh.
smile.
Well, it makes a nice. Well, it's not a nice change, of course, but it's nice for us when it's a draw to have another plastic medal, as opposed we thought we were going to be completely outshone as usual by your genuine golds. So I think that takes us in nicely, Josh, to maybe start. I don't know the latest news on the Olympics and Paralympics in Tokyo, because I understand they published a so-called playbook.
If they have, I haven't seen it. If it came out today, I won't have seen it.
Oh, right. Yes,
Um,
it did come out today. It's perhaps not the most convincing document in the world. It talks about people being tested at least every 3 or 4 days and not using public transport and not having to have a vaccine.
yeah, I haven't
Tell us
seen
next week.
anything. From what I can gather from before today, the current plan was fingers crossed. I think was the general operating procedure, and it may well still be that from the sounds of it. Yeah, I
Well, I
haven't.
think there's that as well. But what they've done is publish what they call the first of their playbooks, which has got the details of the processes that they're wedded to. And they've published it very much with a kind of, yes, this is what's going to happen. This is what can happen.
Yeah, I think
And I suspect if you could teleport everybody there, that easily could happen. But anyway, we'll come back to that then, and I won't sabotage the rest of your sports and games report by asking you about things you've not seen.
yes, no, I haven't seen, but I think if anyone's going to try and do it right, it's going to be the IOC and the IPC. They've got plenty of examples of sports that have done it right and sports that have done it wrong that they can learn from. So fingers crossed that they can put a workable kind of plan together. But in terms of things that I have seen that I can talk about, the first one is a super quick one about the Vendée Globe. I know Julie talked about it quite a lot on Friday, but what I hadn't seen, I saw an article that may have come out after the show. I'm not sure what time it was published, of Damien Seguin kind of crossing the finish line.
So just to explain to anybody who's not familiar with the Vendée Globe, that's a single-handed round the world don't stop yacht race that Julie's been reporting on.
Yes, is that he crossed the line in full Captain Hook fancy dress, complete with Hook for his missing hand. And one, that's kind of right up my sense of humor. But also, I just like the idea that in the, you're probably trying to minimize as much weight as you possibly can to go around the world. That part of it was spent on a Captain Hook fancy dress outfit just for that. And I just got all the time in the world for that. I thought that was ace.
Well, you were saying, Julie, weren't you? He was the only one sailing an old boat, a boat that was over 10 years old.
No, there's several who are sailing the older boats, but he was the only one in that particular group. They call it the Peloton group, who had that age of boat. Everybody else had foils and clever things attached to it, all very modern.
And he was the only one up with the leaders in an
yes,
old boat,
he was
wasn't
at that
he?
point.
Yeah, and I think he was also the first parasailer to ever finish. as well.
I think Josh, I think he was the only one ever to do it. I don't
Well,
think.
yeah, that's probably
No, I don't. I don't think there's ever been a parasailer who's ever
whether
tried
they
it
kind of
before.
try. Yeah,
I bet there will be now.
yeah.
Of course they will.
So moving on, speaking of paradance, actually, as G mentioned earlier, and I'm going to read this. Forgive me, I haven't memorized it all, but from the 12th to the 19th of March, World Para Dance Sport, which is its official name, are doing an online contest for para dancers to compete. So it's video submissions between 90 and 120 seconds in length. And there's kind of different categories for kind of men's singles, women's singles, kind of new athletes in power chairs. And it just looks really interesting as a you do have to be a registered athlete. But yeah, it's kind of film it and submit it online for a competition.
Yeah, I suppose it makes me feel a bit sad because one of the things that I run, and I'm also the artistic director of, is a wheelchair dance company called Folk in Motion. And we haven't been able to dance now for, well, nearly 12 months. The centre where we used to dance is now being redeveloped only to deal with families and children. There's a, you know, with the highest adult mortality rate in the UK, Newham is actually cutting what few services remain for adults. And I just was sitting there this morning thinking, oh, where on earth can we go where we could actually find a space that we can even dance in? And I think that's the trouble at the moment. I think very, very few people have got space at home to dance in, let alone para dance, which is always for pairs at least. I mean, our dance, because it's based on folk dance, is social dance, so it's for a minimum of 4 wheelchair users. So I can't help thinking there'll be countries that are much, much better able to compete than the UK. I mean, we've got some wonderful para dancers. You know, Julie and I have been to the national championships on more than one occasion, really, really enjoyed it. But it really does depend on being able to get into a space, which, of course, legally, we're not even allowed to do at the moment. So,
Yeah,
yeah, let's keep a watchful eye on that because it
yeah,
might be that we really watch some great. I mean, I bet the Australians will be doing well. They'll be
yeah.
doing great in New Zealand, wonderfully in Taiwan, and maybe we can get some inspiration.
Yeah, slight correction as well. From me, registered athletes that must have entered by the 12th of March. Unregistered athletes, it's by the 19th. So whilst it runs on kind of those dates, if you're an established competitor, you have like till the 12th. And they've also separated it so that those that are classified within the world of para dance will be judged separately from those people that are kind of new athletes or unclassified athletes. So if
It
you've never
does
done it
sound
before, you don't have to compete against the world champs. Don't worry. Um,
yeah,
it
it
will
does
be
sound
separate judging.
it sounds fascinating. So we'll pop the details up on the highlights and links page. If you happen to be a pair of dancers living somewhere with a decent space to move in, please do enter on behalf of the UK because very few people are going to be in that position. So what's next?
I was going to move on to gaming next. Um,
Well, that's right, isn't it? There's not a great deal of sport about for anybody.
yeah, just for the time, I'll move on to gaming. I'll maybe give some rewatch recommendations on Friday. Um, but actually, one of the games that I've been trying to find some time to play recently, that came out a couple of weeks ago, is a game called Hitman 3, which is the third game in a trilogy. And unsurprisingly, you play a hitman. Um, but aside from the slightly violent nature of the game, I think what's really important, we've talked so much about the artistic elements in computer games, that actually every single level is basically it's called a sandbox game, which comes from sandboxes. You can get in and do whatever you want. Um, and as a creative art piece, they're phenomenal. I mean, these levels are huge, and beautiful. If you just kind of put it into Google image searches, you'll see the artistic craft around it. I mean, kind of how just designed and drawn they are. But I think the
Let's
sound
try and get
design
one
and
of
all
those
that.
links up. If we can get a link here, if we can find a link directly into that particular Google image search, we'll put the direct link up under highlights and links.
Yeah, I'll add that. I'll send that over at the end of the show. But also, things like the sound design of like overhearing conversations and where you get kind of information and things like that. There's one level where you have to go to a nightclub, and how the sound is mixed into the level of whether you're walking towards or away from where the music is. If there's a door open and things like that, it changes all the levels, and it sounds like if you go to the toilet in the level or walk into where the toilets are, having been to a toilet in a nightclub, it sounds like what it sounds like. But to get that experience from a computer game is incredible. To feel that level of immersion is just, and if you all the reviews just rave over kind of how amazing the technology in it is.
And which platforms is it for?
All of them. It's available on everything. Kind of Xbox, PlayStation, PC, I think Switch, if anyone's playing it on Switch. But yeah, it is a great game, and also it comes with all the first two in the series. You can just download it and play it within that one game. You still have to pay
And
for it, obviously.
I
But
was going to say, so we've heard all of the good news. What's the bad news on the damage for the price?
I think the base one is £50 or £60, which is what yes, that is expensive, but unfortunately nowadays that's what a kind of
It's
AAA
certainly
game runs. Unfortunately,
But to counter that, I mean,
but it is well worth that
I was going to say,
money.
how many hours of entertainment? If if it
Oh,
costs
no,
you,
I completely get that. It's
yeah,
just on behalf of everybody for whose that's 2 weeks shopping budget.
yeah, I
Zero
totally
Yeah,
get that.
percent.
yes,
On
but
the
I
other
know.
hand, if you were saving up for a holiday that's never going to happen, then I think you're absolutely right. And there's an awful. I mean, I think if you've got money, it's not a bad way to spend it. I think it's just we have to be aware that, of course, so many people don't. But I had no idea that you could do that. I guess it's just me, but it always strikes me as odd that all of the nice fluffy stuff gets kept for Nintendo. And if you want to do anything else, then you're almost certainly going to have to play games that involve violence.
I think there are a lot of fluffy, or kind of more family friendly games available on the other platforms. It's what I've been, as a fan of the series for
Well,
a long
no,
time, it's what I've been playing recently.
I'm not knocking your recommendations.
No.
As
Yeah,
you
I mean,
we got a PS4 in July, and I would say we're still really struggling to find games that. I mean, I'm sure there's times that I'd feel very
yeah,
happy
I think
if they shoot
next
them
week
up.
I'll do a dig and find some. I know there's certainly some older games that I'm aware of, things like Little Big Planet and things like that, where
Yeah.
you're a kind
Is-
of wall
and
person solving puzzles.
that's a PS4 game.
That's a
Isn't it?
PS4
Yeah.
game. Yeah, I'll find some other games, maybe some older ones that we can talk about, which also means they'll probably be cheaper, or potentially free if you have kind of subscriptions to game libraries and things.
Yeah, we have the subscription because it's so cheap, but I can't pretend we're actually using it much. On the other hand, we are pretty busy. So that is another issue. Have you been playing any games, Robin?
Well, other than Mario Kart, which I am still absolutely abysmal
You
at.
didn't come 12th yesterday.
Shut up. Sorry.
Well, everybody else in the family wants to play it with you then. Funny that.
No, we have actually. I mean, we've been playing a new card game, which is still gaming, which is called Muffin
Time.
Muffin Time, which we won't go into now. Maybe something for the weekend.
Yeah.
We could come back to that because it's quite a fascinating little game. and other than being able to read, doesn't require any other skill whatsoever.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, I think it'd be nice to revisit some card games, wouldn't it? On a Friday for new viewers, we have a feature called Something for the Weekend. We recommend things you can do from home, online and offline, mostly entirely free. And of course, on Friday, we also dress up to go out to stay in. Julie's famous Bernie Sanders outfit last week, I thought went down very well. I don't know how you're going to top that this Friday, but we'd certainly love to see other people's efforts. Have you got any thoughts for this weekend yet, Julie?
No, not really. No, no. I just meant to say earlier on the theme for next week's poetry club is dance or dancing.
Oh, that's great because we very much encourage you to join in with the Poetry Club from home, whether or not you want to join in by phone and come to the actual group. We'd love to see your poems. We'd love to see you. Films of you reading them out loud. If there's one week where we'd really like to encourage people to read their own work rather than sending it to us, it is National, World, International, whatever it's called, Read Out Loud Day. I don't know if anybody else can help me out on this one. So, also coming up on Friday, we have Art Club with Tracy, and Tracy will be telling us about something else we can make. I think we're all still working on junk mail and 1001 craft and art uses for junk mail. And I was very impressed with the decoupage, which she did last week, which they've also been trying in our Tuesday Make and Natter group. Did you have anything else you wanted to tell us about the club's program, Julie?
Not as such. We're anticipating the poetry club will go ahead as usual next week because Alison Marchant, our international artist, who's our program leader, is getting trained hopefully on Friday. So if there's any difficulties, we've got a fallback position.
And in the meantime, as well as writing about dance or dancing, on the fourth Monday of the month, we have our Screen Dance Club. Very fortuitously, we started from the beginning saying we would only make dance for the screen wearing masks. So, although that's on Zoom at the moment, at least it's probably closest to its original club, shall we say, than everything else is. Did you have anything you wanted to add from the West Midlands in terms of news or indeed any additional sports updates?
There's nothing from me. Then if you wanted to do.
Nothing. I mean, I sent you a message. I don't know if you saw that, just to say I've got a poem I could finish with. It's
Oh,
quite
well,
quick.
that's great. I didn't need that text because I was going to say that if nobody else wanted to say anything, as it's Read Out Loud Day, we're going to finish with Robin reading out loud. He's definitely our champion reader out loud. So over to you to introduce it, Robin.
Okay, now I've chosen this poem because of because it's LGBTQI plus month or awareness month. This poem is very much just about being who you are, and it's called Usually. Sometimes I turn the corner. Sometimes I turn around. Sometimes when I feel strong enough, I turn the other cheek. Sometimes I'm backed into corners. Sometimes I'm up against the wall. Sometimes, when I feel strong enough, I roll over people's feet. Sometimes, I stare at myself in the mirror. Sometimes, I put on a brave face. Sometimes, when I feel strong enough, I meet them face to hip. Sometimes, I feel out of control. Sometimes, I don't have a choice. But usually, I think, up yours. I am who I am and proud of it. Thank you and have a great rest of Wednesday.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you to EJ for the recommendation about the physics book. We're going to pop that up under highlights and links as well. And we'll be back on Friday. So it's goodbye from East London.
And it's
Goodbye
goodbye
from the
from
West
West
Midlands.
Mids. Bye.